Hey, kids. Want to win this Tom Waits record? Want to help me review a couple of records? You've come to the right show. Welcome to this special Friday edition of Vinyl Junkies. You're getting 2 episodes this week rather than just one, both of them having to do with Detroit. The initial idea was just to do the Detroit show on Sunday like I usually do and split it up into 2 parts, right? The first part being the Making Vinyl conference, which was there, and talking about, what happened there and how... talk about the state of the vinyl industry. And the second part is the fun part, right? Talking about the record stores that I visited and all of the swag that I came, giving you my idea of Detroit and what their record stores are like. But I soon realized that there was way too much material to do, so I split it up into 2 shows. The fun stuff's going to happen on Sunday. That's when we talk real music. I'll try to make this one and throw in some music facts in it as well. But we're going to focus a little bit more on industry side of things. So those of you who really like nerding out on, the actual product of vinyl, you'll probably enjoy this. I went to Making Vinyl, or actually just also to mention is I'm going to be giving one of you 4 records, okay? Because in putting this together, I don't want you guys to take my word for it when it comes to issues of quality controls or where we are with vinyl. The entire point of this is to have a conversation with you, okay? I want to know what's going on with you, what you think you're getting, and what your experiences have been purchasing records. So, I guess I've always kind of noticed, that the quality of vinyl is not the same now as it used to be. Now, it was a whole lot worse, in the early 2000s, 2007, 2009, it was another thing, but even now, it's just still, the quality control was always something that was an issue. And the catalyst for that was one day, I just did a show on record digging and decided I'm going to visit 3 or 4 record stores and pick up some stuff as source material, and wound up picking up a whole bunch of brand new material that was warped right out of the shrink wrap and had marks on the record and had dimples and a whole lot of things. Naturally, I was extremely frustrated, so I said exactly that, and I thought to and what it is that I saw also is that I received a lot of the same feedback from you guys. You guys started telling me about your own experience with these records. Oh, so for example, this Autechre box set, all 12 discs were warped. It's not just a me issue, it's a wide issue, and how do we deal with all of this? It's happening a lot, and records cost what they cost. Is it too much? No, maybe not. Maybe you think it is, but can those costs be justified, right? Because it's a physical product and it costs money to make. So those are the types of things that I want to tackle. And frankly, those are the types of things that I saw I needed to tackle going to the Making Vinyl conference. To me, this audience and answering your questions and engaging in a dialogue with you is what this is all about. So I look at a lot of records. I handle a lot of records. I can tell that there's a difference between one and another, even when you're talking about brand new things. So I went there with these concerns. I went there with these stories of, having bought a Manowar record that was warped and the Autechre box set and so forth. And I want to share my experiences with you, if I can have a drink. So, all this is to say that I did very, very much go to Making Vinyl in Detroit with your concerns in mind. Okay, your concerns are very much my concerns because I am a consumer of this music as well. It was an $850, $900 bill that day type of thing. So I buy music, and when I, buying that massive music, coming home and just being caught with so much mass frustration, I still have these fucking records at home because I haven't had the time to go to the record store. So now I'm stuck with maybe $200 worth of records that are no good. Okay, at least by my standard. So that brings us to another question, right? Is there a standard? What is that standard? Should there be something that all of us adopt so that we kind of have an idea and we can say, okay, this record is passable and this one isn't? Now, I don't know of any. There might be. But I thought what I would do is introduce maybe my standard. Tell you guys the parameters that I look at when I examine a record, okay, and what I look like when I receive a record for review and take a look. And what you guys can do is, if you see I'm missing anything, just weigh in, drop in your points. We want to know what your tips are. What kind of vinyl, what kind of things do you do to see if you have a good record or not, okay? Obviously, the equipment you play it on is different. So we've got a lot of stuff to talk about. We're not going to run out of stuff. The good news is, like I said, one of you is going to get 4 records, okay? What I've also done is we're going to do a live review. We're actually not going to do just one live review. We're going to do a bunch of live reviews. Since I've been back from Detroit on Wednesday, I've received 4 different packages from 4 different companies with 4 different types of records. Okay, so what it is that I'm going to do is we're going to do some live reviews, and I'm going to put some stuff down here, and you can tell me what's acceptable and what's not. So in other words, it's not me that's going to be the answer. You guys are going to be the answer. We're going to do the whole audience participation thing. You understand? It's like Mr. Rogers, you know, when he used to feed the goldfish. You know why he used to always say that he would feed the goldfish? Because at one point, a blind fan wrote to him and said, I want to know what you're doing. I want to know if you have any pets. And from that moment on, what he did was kept telling the kid when he was feeding the goldfish so that he could know, even though he couldn't see the goldfish, he could know. Very cool. I'm not sure why it is that I got into Mr. Rogers, but I'm sure somehow I'll remember at one point. Okay, so let's get back to let's get back to making vinyl, right? I went to their agenda in hand. The first agenda was the fun agenda, right? I got in on the Saturday night. The conference started only on the Monday, but I got in on the Saturday night because I knew I was going to hang out with a vinyl junkie at that point, and we hung out on the Saturday. Sunday was going to be a solid day of digging. Monday, Tuesday was work. I'll talk about that fun stuff on Sunday. We'll talk about the work part today. Okay, so let's pretend it's Monday. Go to the Making Vinyl conference. They give the, you know, the numbers, I guess. What do you call it when you go to those things there? The first speech. I don't know why I call it a speech, but you know the first thing, the opening monologue, the opening whatever, right? The State of the Union address. So Michael Kurtz gets on the stage, and I mean, he's the founder, along with Carrie Colleton, of Record Store Day, and, you know, gives us a State of the Union, and records are doing really well. We're really on our way to having our best year yet. Fantastic. Now, I forgot what exactly the topic was, but you know, they asked some questions at some point, and opened up the floor. I immediately put up my hand and said, look, you know, first of all, Michael, you know, Carrie, thank you for everything that you've done with Record Store Day. It's a wonderful thing, despite any problems. It's a wonderful thing, and it's made a difference. Okay, and it's the reason we consume music the way we consume music. I'm sure that we wouldn't be as far if it wasn't for that. And then what it is that I did was I mentioned my intent, which is to say, look, I would like very much to use this conference as an opportunity to discuss with all of you, you know, quality control when it comes to these records. I know that you guys work very hard to make these records, and everyone wants to make good records, but my experience is this. And mentioned a couple of records. Okay, I don't know. It's on tape. You know, they can watch it if they want. Maybe I got animated. I get animated. You know, I got energy. I like this stuff. So anyway, all this is to say, at one point, you know, it's just, okay, well, no, look, save it. We're going to talk about that. That's the last conference on the Tuesday. We'll talk about it then, you know. And I kind of did that on purpose. Not kind of. I actually 1000% did that on purpose. Because, you see, when I looked at the itinerary of the conference, I saw that the quality control thing was last. And by the time you finish those kinds of things, you know, it's like that last day on vacation, you're already packing. Your head's not in it anymore, and the conversation wouldn't go anywhere. So to me, this was very important. What I did was, that's exactly why I mentioned this straight off the bat, because I wanted to make sure that I could spend an entire Monday answering questions, engaging in conversation, asking questions, and relaying the consumer's concerns. You know, you guys watch the show, so I don't know how many people are going to watch this in the end, but people watch it, so I figured that I have a certain responsibility to know, you know, to make sure that you guys are kind of getting the same records that I would expect for myself, and quality matters to me. So that's why it is that I mentioned it right off the top. Now, you know, I did get told, you know, it's like, well, yeah, it was a little off topic, and frankly, I knew it was off topic. And that didn't matter, because I wanted to talk about this, and I thought it was important, and, you know, frankly, it worked. Because what wound up happening during the entire conference was many people just came to me and asked, what do you mean? And asked for specific examples, and gave their 2 cents. Where does the problem start? You know, and there were a lot of things said. So for me, it was a lot of fun, because it allowed me to put a mindset on, and from that moment, just start gathering facts with that in mind. Okay, don't forget, folks, I come home and I put this show together, and I want to be able to prepare a report that has, I don't know, some kind of information to it. I want to give you the goods, right? And I want to tell you the truth. Good, bad, ugly, whatever it is. Okay, so I went there with great hope, and I got to tell you, I planned this stuff way ahead of time. I worked on my metaphors, I worked on my comparisons to make sure that I could get my point across in the best way possible. All right, so the conversation definitely went on throughout. And one thing that was fun, you would be surprised at the people that came and showed most interest in actually discussing this. Of course, there was the consumer, and there were some folks, there were some Spanish folks from Panama that really, you know, took the time to talk to me and wanted to kind of discuss it. It was a little difficult in Spanish, but we got it done. And there was a, you guys are going to like this, man, there's a documentary on vinyl, or collecting vinyl, that's being made, and the folks there were present at the Making Vinyl conference. So I'm curious as to what that's what's gonna happen there, because it'll make for a great program, and it's certainly, I know, fuck, it's a movie I want to watch, right? And anyway, everyone had their opinions. Okay, I'm gonna keep everything general until we get to day 2, because that's where the nitty gritty starts happening. But everyone had their opinions, but for the most part, shoulder shrugs, concern, reasonings, which is to say, where does it happen? Open questions, how can we do something? For the most part, everything seemed okay, but honestly, the impression that I got was that everybody was kind of saying, okay, well, you know, that the party line eventually really became, well, look, we're only one part of this chain of hundreds of transactions that happen from making that record, or even before making that record, getting all those files together, to when it reaches the customer's hand. We are only responsible for ours, and we try to do the best we can, but once the product leaves our hands, there's nothing we can do anymore. Now, to me, I certainly understand that. There's no question that I understand that, but I also do not believe that that's an appropriate answer, because the customer is paying for a product that works properly. Now, of course, thankfully, I spent a month thinking about how to make things as simple as possible. So the one example that I used there was the example of the car, which is to say, you know, you can buy a luxury car, and the car can drive well. Brakes work, everything works. Safety standards. Safeties, Corinthian leather seats. Mark Levinson stereo. We're talking good. If that car has a noisy air conditioning unit, the rest doesn't matter. Oh, well, you know, we handle the carburetor. And we do our very best to build the very best carburetor. But once we're done with the carburetor, it's out of our hands. If you bought a car, would you accept that? See, now that's one example that I use. Another example that I used is bread. Do you like bread? I like bread. Look at me. I'm a big boy. I like bread. You probably like bread too. Some of you have a little bit more self-control than me, but we like bread. Why do you go to the local bread shop instead of just a grocery store and buy a bag of that fucking Wonder Bread? Why? Because the artisanal shop is better, right? The bread tastes better. It's baked fresh. Sometimes it's warm. There's all of these things that make it so that you're going to make that special trip to go get that loaf of bread. Okay? Now, I don't know. Let's compare it to warping of records, you know? You go there one day and the bread's burnt. Not a lot. Just a little bit on the top. It's black, a little. A little. Now, you pointed to the... Dude, bread's burnt. I'm sorry, man. It's just, it's a hot day over here. You know, the thermometer didn't work. It stayed in the oven just a little too long. Would you buy that bread and say, okay. Or would you maybe go find another baker? Or would you give the same baker the same chance? You know what I'm saying? It's just, I broke it down into that. So, conversation ensued. Vigorous conversation. One thing that I noticed is that people definitely care. Okay, one thing that made me happy is to hear people call making vinyl a craft. That made me really happy. You know, the other message that I was trying to get across immediately is, I didn't have much time to kind of do it, but anyway, that we're not selling vinyl, we're selling an experience. Vinyl is only one part of that experience, okay? So people who listen to vinyl aren't just listening to music. What it is that they're doing is making a lifestyle choice, if they actually listen to it, okay? That is to say that when you put on a piece of wax, it's not the same general mindset as if you turn on Spotify while you're washing the dishes. You know, generally speaking, if you know that you're going to sit down, the stereo is usually in a comfortable place, right? Favorite chair, maybe. You'll make yourself a drink. You'll do something in order to create an atmosphere that is more conducive to you enjoying that music in a different way, connecting with it on a deeper level. Drive-through versus a sit-down meal. You know, you can take the same McDonald's French fries. If you're eating them in the car, it's one thing. You take those exact French fries and those stale burgers, you put them on the table and you eat them with your family. Just the act of doing that makes the meal more qualitative. It makes it a better thing. It's the same thing for vinyl. So what it is that I'm saying is that it's all these qualitative things that make it so that we, you know, you're not selling vinyl. You're not selling a product. What you're selling is an experience. And, you know, try to have the conversation as much as possible. Now, my hope was to just be able to come out and say that everything was beautiful, but everything was not beautiful. Stuff was actually quite disappointing, and I feel I owe it to you guys, the audience, you know, the people who buy the records, to tell you about that. And for those in the industry that are watching, you know, what it is that I'd like to do is use this as kind of like just to do what it is that I wasn't able to do on that Tuesday there, okay? Which is to say, hey, let's do something about this together. Let's put our heads together and solve this. Is there a quality control issue to begin with? You know what? There was a lot of justifying happening over there, okay? Like I said, oh, you know, we're in charge of we're the carburetor people. We had a lot of carburetor people, okay? Other people kind of passing the buck, kicking it under the rug, not really wanting to deal with it. Not too many solutions, and the fact that there weren't too many solutions isn't a problem, okay? Because I'll read some notes afterwards, okay? And you'll see why it is that I'm saying this, but it's a new problem. So not having the answers right now, you got to work at them. You got to put your heads together and come up with a solution. The first thing you got to do, though, is you got to admit collectively, guys, there's an issue over here. Okay, and believe it or not, that is the first hurdle, because as far as I know, I am the most unlucky person there is in this entire universe when it comes to vinyl, and my experience is completely out of the ordinary. Now, like I said, we're going to do a live review at the end of this where I'm talking about 4 different packages that came from 4 sources. Okay, so you're going to be the judge and you guys are going to help me do that. And at the end of this entire thing, I'm going to send one of you records, the same records that I'm going to review right here, and you're going to give me your impressions. Okay, so we're really going to try to do this in a constructive way so that we can see what the deal is. Anyway, many good conversations had. Tuesday comes along. Now, for me, this was really the day, right? I mean, this is the day that I went there because I was waiting. I mean, I appeared on a conference. It was nice. Vinyl evangelism. You know, people who champion the format. Why do I champion the format? For the same reasons that I just said. It's an experience. It allows me to connect to art in a manner that's far deeper than any other format. The bigger picture, all of this, you know, it's not a sound thing for me. It's a qualitative experience. Okay, and I said as much at the panel, but you know, when it came to me actually just putting the topic on and getting my 2 cents in, and please understand, I mean, look, draw your own conclusions, whether I'm doing this for ego, whether I'm doing this because I genuinely care. I'm not going to ask, you know, just draw your own conclusions. I'm comfortable with whatever you come up with, but I wanted to have my say because that's the reason I took a plane from Montreal to Detroit. That's the reason I got there early. That's the reason that I did all of this, because I knew that I would have to cover the thing, and I cared enough about it to be able to present a report. Okay. We know vinyl did well last year. It's going to be the best sales ever. What issues did we come up with? I'll tell you some of the stuff that I overheard. Okay, why don't we go there first? Okay, things overheard. Like I said, we talked about the carburetor people. We do everything we can, but once it leaves our warehouse, it's out of our hands. Okay. Making vinyl has literally different, hundreds of different variables to consider. It's absolutely true. Now, my favorite statement, which is true, vinyl is a craft. The people that make these records care. They do, you know, they care. They want good records. Nobody wants to make bad records. Let's be absolutely clear, okay? And for me to be saying this is because I want to have a discussion so that we can work towards doing something better. I'm not saying we're going to shit on each other. There's no good in that. The discussion is what it's about, but you got to come to the table. You have to come to the table in order for that to happen, okay? So vinyl is a craft. At that same conference, everyone wants a 6-week job done in 4 weeks. Everything's in a hurry. Every client wants the job done fast. Everything's a rush thing. If you don't meet the tight deadlines, you're going to lose the business to somebody else. Now, the reason I put those two things back to back is, think of irony a little bit. It's a craft, but that loaf of bread over there, it takes 40 minutes. I got fucking stomach cramps over here. These breadsticks, they're not doing the job. I need that loaf of bread. I know it takes 40, 45 minutes to bake, but I need you to give it to me in 20. At that point, what happens to your craft? Is it a craft? For me, if it's a craft, then the answer is I can't do it. A loaf of bread takes 45 minutes to bake, period. Okay. Records don't cost too much. We just need to educate people about what goes into making a record. I tend to agree with that. And I would have said as much. I didn't have the opportunity to say as much. So the prices are justified? Yeah, for the most part, prices are justified. But again, a conversation has to be had. What are the real issues? Unless we're talking about it collectively, it doesn't work. So here it is, from my perspective, the most important part of this, where it concerns the person who matters the most, the one who buys the record, was held at the very end of the conference. Now, I was keen. I enjoyed the conversations. I tried as much as possible to bring all of the information together so that I can make some kind of informed, you know, just informed observation. So, 4 times. I mean, individually things don't matter, but when you start looking, you know, sample sizes, the bigger the sample size is, the closer it is that you get to really knowing what the situation is. Okay, well, look, I mean, it's only a day and a half, but in a small period of time like that, when you got 4 points of information that tell you, you know, maybe they didn't want to talk about it. Sometimes you start wondering, maybe they didn't want to talk about it. Okay. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you what these 4 points are, because that's what we do, right? So this conference on standards. 4 times. Four. Again, by itself, it seems like nothing. And I mean, I'm not a sensitive guy. I don't care if people like me or not. I don't care. I don't care. It's about the music. I want to talk about music. That's it. Okay? So, our little panel starts. We opened up the morning, 8:30 in the morning. We start the panel, and the person in charge of heading the panel comes to me before the show starts and tells me basically to behave. Yeah, no problem. Okay. So the panel starts, and okay, this is what we're going to be discussing, evangelism, all the rest of this, and, you know, we'll introduce everybody, and all of you guys, why don't you tell us what you do? So, okay, we're going to do this. Let's talk, Sam. Sam, please tell us who you are in a very succinct manner. Now, again, point number 2. Am I offended by it? No, I'm not offended by it, but you're basically telling me, all right, you know, the orchestra's playing before I've even accepted the award. Hey, bring in the orchestra. We got Nike ads. We got Nike ads to put on. Bring in the orchestra. Frank Sinatra is accepting a Lifetime Achievement Awards, but we're going to stop it. Anyway, all this is to say that even before, and the orchestra was playing before a word came out of my mouth. So it kind of put me in a situation where I answered the questions really, really short. And it's like, look, I was already mindful of the fact that I'm there with another 4 people. So it's not like it's the Vinyl Junkies show. I know this. But, you know, I had to be told to be succinct. So, offended? Nah. Not offended, but, you know, at this point, those are 2 points of information. So, we then go to Tuesday, which is the quality control panel. And the quality control panel, right off the bat, the moderator, right off the bat, right off the bat. Roll the tape. The tape exists. Comes out and says, what is it that he says? Sorry, I'm trying to get the notes over here. I built it up, and basically something to the effect of, look, let's just all kind of like, we all want to make good records that have no problems and that are flat, you know, but it was kind of posed in a way, it was, you know what, let's just right now, before we even start this, let's operate on the premise that everybody wants a good record that plays well and is flat. Now, you see, that's a problem for me. I'll tell you why it's a problem. Because that conversation, what it is that it does, is it's basically telling you, we don't need to talk about this. Let's just accept that we all agree on this. But you see, all agreeing on something doesn't mean we're having a discussion. You're not going to get to the meat of the issues unless you open it up. So, it's dismissive to say, let's all... To me, the way it is that I interpret that is, you know what? We don't need to talk about this. The first thing that came out of my mouth is, we need to talk about this. So, I'm seeing conflicting messages on a panel about quality control. That's point number 3. So, point number 4. At this point, they do their whole thing, and one person there, I forgot which company he works with, but one person there pretty much said, it's simple. We need to be better, and everybody we need to have a standard, which I loved. I immediately loved. And I guess I'll save Billy Fields for last because he came up with the best takeaway from that entire conference. I will save it for last, but basically the UPSs and DHLs and Purilators of the world need to be there as well. But we reach the end of the conversation. Now the floor gets open to questions. Now, I'm standing right in front, okay? Because I want to make sure that we have this. I want to make sure that I have something to go back with, okay? Why is this happening? Is it just me? And moderator looks this way and looks that way, but not at me. This way, that way. Okay. Pick that person. Okay. Now look, I'm up front like this with a fucking Arnold Horshack. Ooh, 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 ooh. Mr. Carter. Mr. Carter. I was doing one of these. Okay. Now, second time around, it's like, hey, dude, I'm right here. So it's like, bring out the vocal cue. Hey, I'm right here. Hey, I got a question. So it goes to number 2. I'm not taking any of this personally. It's a question of, at this point, there's only so much time to the conference, so I know that time is running out. There's no time to discuss anything, so I want to get my question in. So point number 3 now. At this point, it's like, okay, well, I had my hand up like fucking Horseshack the first time. The second time, vocally, Mr. Carter. The third time, I figure it's my turn. It goes somewhere else. Now, at this point, when you take point 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and you take all of those together, that's what I call a sample. There was 5 minutes left of the discussion. We're not going to get anything done. I got up. Fuck it. Nothing got done. So I went there, and this thing that I went there for, to discuss for you guys. Not for my own self-gratification, not for my ego, but because I love records and I'm frustrated and I want an answer. And I don't think that it's right you charge anybody anything for some of the shit that's coming out. Okay? My cat wants to leave. My cat's meowing. So, the conversation never happened. I got shut out. Maybe I'm sensitive. Fake news. Perhaps. But that's the story and I'm sticking to it. So at the end of this entire thing, on top of that, wanting to just do all of it, it's just, hey, I was just going to call you. Wow, that brought me back to my team. Oh, I was going to call you. Listen. You got to call it like you see it. It's just, no, you shut me out is what happened. So, these are the types of things that don't help anybody. And these are the types of things that I'm not saying for personal reasons. Whether you believe that or not will have to be up to you. These are the types of things that I say because I genuinely care, and I don't want to see the industry fuck this up, kill the golden goose. I don't want it. And honestly, I see signs that that's what's happening, or it can happen. There's no doubt there. So the conversation never happened, and it pissed me off. But if I come out here pissed off, I'm not going to make my point. I'm not going to get anywhere. So I was happy that I was able to stew on this for a good bunch of days. Okay, because I wanted to make sure that I presented a cogent type of report. So, Tuesday, Wednesday, whatever, okay? The days come here. We're now Friday. I'll try to keep the emotion out of it, or at least I have tried for the most part. But what it is that I decided when that was going to happen is, no, okay? Firstly, you should not tell somebody, speak, but within these parameters. We're there to talk or we're there not to. So, I'm either invited to the table or I'm not invited to the table. The cat's meowing and it's just completely distracting me. Yeah, Charles, they didn't want to hear the truth. Look, the fact is that they knew that I was going to speak my mind. I don't have to be a prick about it. but I would have presented the facts. I would have presented my experience, and I had experiences. I spent $125 on an Autechre box set in which 12 records were warped. I spent $40 on a Manowar record, and the fucking record was warped. I get a Tom Petty box set, and it's got a cigar burn on one of the records, and it's got a smudge on it, like somebody tried to wipe it off and then still sleeved it. Hey, how many times does it have to happen? You follow what I'm saying? I think it's a story worth telling. Now, if you put somebody in a corner, you're not going to have a conversation. If you're going to use bully tactics, you're not going to have a conversation. You need both parties to come. But I think that I did what I needed to do in order to go to the table, but I didn't feel that that was reciprocated. Now, if you know anything about me, that shit doesn't fly. If I got something to say, I'm going to say it. So you know what I did? I made sure that I made the point for myself. I came home and I got a bunch of packages. And the packages were perfect. 4 different packages in 3 days. Okay? So I get to one package, and this is what it looks like. Here's where it is that we do the audience participation part, okay? There are 5 records. This package had 6 records. Okay, we're not going to talk companies because the entire point of this is really to come to solutions, not to point fingers. Okay? This is a fucking industry-wide problem. No point in trying to throw anyone under the bus. Let's get it done. So, let's talk about Company X. Brings me 6 records. 5 out of 6 looked like this, okay? Now you tell me if it's acceptable or not, and I numbered them. So you tell me, 1 to 5, please leave it in the comments, okay? Tell me what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. Here we go. So that's number 1. Not bad, but still warped, right? Not perfect. That's all sorts of fucked up. No way. Okay. Is that type of warpage acceptable? So what it is that we're seeing is 5 records, and all of them have a degree of warpage. I mean, how many of those are acceptable and how many of those are unacceptable? Is there a standard where we can say it's fair or it's not fair? In your head, which ones are bad? 1 to 5. Please mark it down. I want to know. They want to know. They're watching. Let's make this, you know what? I just paid for a Gallup poll. I just paid for a poll. Let's call it that, all right? So, that's what I did. Can we accept that at least one of those is completely unacceptable? I would argue more, but, you know, what's that level? Where does the problem stop? What do we do as an industry and without towing this fucking line of, I take care of the carburetors? No. You're part of a chain. You, no matter what part of the chain you're at, are not selling what you're selling. You're selling an experience. You're one of the craftsmen. If that's a problem, we need to take care of it. Okay? It should be said that I do believe when it comes to defects, that's one thing, and I will get to the points that I make, okay, in order how it is that I do my record reviews, okay. But it should be said that I think personally, I didn't get to say it, but I do think personally that the vast majority of problems comes from the way these records are shipped, okay. Once upon a time, there weren't as many points of shipment, so it's kind of like they went from this place, they wound up to the record store in much more short periods and in bulk, okay? Now, all of a sudden, the Amazons and everybody else, there's individual packaging, global warming doesn't exist, so there's heat waves and records come warped. I definitely firmly believe that a lot of this problem is because of the fact that the conditions to deliver a record from the business to the individual customer is absolutely inherently flawed. Okay. That's something I would have said immediately. I didn't have that chance. What do you guys think? Now, what do we do about that? Had we had a conversation, I had ideas. I'm sure there would have been other ideas and we would have been able to take some takeaways out of that. But, you know, What is the idea? Temperature-controlled trucks. Can I tell you something? The one takeaway, here it is where I get to Mr. Billy Fields. The one takeaway, the best takeaway about that whole thing, Billy made it. You want to know why I fuck with Billy? You want to know why it is that I speak so highly of him? Vinyl gets nowhere without him, because that guy, what it is that he did is he listened to everything that was happening, and when it came to the Tuesday, because they answered his question, okay? When it came to the Tuesday, he came up with the most simple but brilliant answer, and it was the answer, and I would have said exactly that. Purelator belongs at the third making vinyl, wherever we have it. Cucamonga, let's do it wherever. Purelator belongs there. UPS belongs there. DHL belongs there. All of them belong there, because these people receive millions of dollars from this industry. And if we were selling cheese, it wouldn't work. We're selling records, it still doesn't work. So we need to fix it. And I think probably the first step towards fixing it is making them aware of a problem. I'm not sure they are. I mean, if all of us are running around in our own direction, obviously, you know, an effort that's put together and planned, and, you know, we can band together and fix this. I'm pretty sure they don't even know it's the problem. Or, you know what, it's been told by so many people that it's just one customer here, one customer there, where it's not being taken seriously. I can assure you that if we invite these people to a conference and we tell them, look, these are the issues here, they're going to listen, because you know what, if they don't listen, they're going to lose business. That's number one. Number two, something else may happen. And it should happen. When you present that, you tell them, hey, how much do we represent? Does your business matter? Does our business matter to you? It does. Records are heavy. Cargo, it's expensive. Okay, well, you know what? We have special needs. As an industry, we have special needs. And these needs need to be met. These records need to arrive a certain way to the customer. And a lot of the quality control issues happen when they leave where we are and when they get there. So there's the issue of the heat. Can we do something about it? And, you know, it's like a contract, right? What happens when you want to get a toilet done? What happens when you want to remodel the bathroom? Remodel the bathroom. You paid the house. So now you got an extra couple of bucks, so you're going to put yourself in debt again, and you're going to remodel the house. Because debt. So when you're remodeling the house, do you just go to the first guy? Hey, okay. No. What you do is you get contracts. What you do is you get quotes. Logic. So, why can't we do this? Why can't we organize so that it's done systematically? I mean, I'm not smart, but it seems like it's something to at least consider. It's something to expound upon. But you see, before you expound upon something, you have to have the conversation. The conversation was not had. So Billy was the only one to say, you know what, next year, all these guys belong here. It's necessary. So bravo, okay? He's the only one, and the fact that it happened the day after tells me that the guy listened to everything and he thought about, he put a real solution forward. He didn't kick it off. He didn't say that he makes the carburetors. As a matter of fact, in an offhand way, he'd joke when it is that it was his problem. He went there trying to be, just trying to get it done. There's two types of people in the world, okay? There's two. There's the ones who make excuses and the ones who get shit done. They fall generally in two camps. Billy gets shit done. So, I got pissed off, and this entire episode is me trying to get shit done. Me trying to make a difference. Because these records matter. I love them. They give my life meaning. The art matters. You're not just making a product. So by the time it gets to my house and I'm chilling out and I see the whole thing wavy, it bums me out. And if I pay for those records, I don't accept it. Let's please do something, okay? Let's go to the feedback part of this. Like I said, what it is that I did is I put together that video, which you know, showed those 5 records warping and asked you guys which records are acceptable and which are not. So last I checked, 40,000 people watched it in the last 24 hours. That's because I put an ad spend behind it. So guess what, folks? I put my money where my mouth is. You might not want to have the conversation, but I'm having the conversation. You know who's going to have the conversation with me? The people who are watching this show. The people who are watching this show are the people that keep all of us alive. Simple. Let's start taking them seriously. So, you guys, I asked you to leave questions. I asked you to leave comments. I wanted to pull out the 3 best comments, and let's see if we can discuss them. I won't use names. Okay. The first comment is, when I put up the video, was I would not be happy with any of them. No, none of the 5. I expect a vinyl record to be flat. I have received the odd record in the past with a slight warp, which, whilst far from being delighted, still, I still kept because it played okay. The industry must strive for perfection. Why wouldn't you? And protect sellers, consumers, in a fair return system. Fair return system is a good thing because we know that vinyl is a non-returnable product. It's a non-refundable product. So, you know, when the air conditioning doesn't work, Toyota or Lexus or whoever, what they do is they issue a recall and they fix that shit. And it makes them look really, really bad, but they do it because they have to. So maybe we need that. So that was one. The comments do get better. Okay, this all seems very simple to me. We shouldn't even have to be discussing it. No, that's not true. We should be discussing it because these are relatively new problems, which leads me to number 2. And this comment is from somebody that I know has actually owned and run a record company, has worked in a record store, has done all of it. So it's an informed opinion that I respect. Okay. I would only attempt to return 4. All 5 of these are garbage, though. And if I thought that my voice would be heard, I'd complain about all of them. But if it was really up to him, he'd go to the store and complain. He'd bring back 4. Okay. The trouble I've noticed, however, is that industry folks seem to feel as though their hands are tied, and then expect everyone else along the line to accept subpar quality. In the 2000s, the attitude seemed to be, hey, at least vinyl is getting pressed, even if it is garbage, and he's right. That still seems to be the accepted norm, and people have been accepting it so long that a lot don't even remember a better time. Look, folks, this is not a paid actor. Then another comment. I have also personally spoken to more than a large handful of these people about this stuff, but these people, I guess, as industry people, as a consumer, as a store buyer, and as a label guy. I've received replies ranging from glorified shrugs, to not my problem, to defensive rage rants, to faux sympathy of, if only something can be done. Brother, sounds like you were in the room with me at that conference. All of which felt like bullshit that made me want to yell. I didn't yell, it doesn't get anywhere. In the end, all I can do is keep supporting music, but the entire time I'm shaking my head asking myself if the industry even realizes how badly they're fucking themselves. I'm pretty sure one of the things that I said on that very first day is, if we don't start taking this stuff seriously, we're going to kill the golden goose. Done it before, remember CDs? So, there you have it. That's what the customer says. Don't take my word for it. If you look, you can read the comments for yourself and you'll notice that I read them verbatim. What's acceptable, what's not acceptable? I guess that's one thing that makes things difficult, and it's very hard for us to say, oh, these records are not acceptable if we don't even have a standard within ourselves. One good thing that happened in making vinyl, well, many good things happened at making vinyl, but one thing that happened is that the RIAA updated their standards for recording on vinyl, which is really cool. Okay, I think standards should come for the overall package as well. So I didn't have time to really do it properly. What it is that I'll do is I'll share my standards. I came up with 10 points. I mean, I'm pretty sure that this is the 1.0 version. So There will be, you know, updates as I think about them, but hey, I mean, I put it together in 20 minutes, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to review some records together. Are you up for it? Is this boring you? Maybe. Let's just say that if you came to hear about music, I'm sorry. I hope you agree that it's important. Okay, so let's go to the boxes that I received. And this is absolutely representative. I'm not making any of this shit up. These are the last 4 boxes of records that I've received, the last 4 shipments from 4 different locations and 4 different people, okay, that I received over the last 2 or 3 days, okay? The first ones we'll look at are the records that we'll call this brand Y, okay? And I would like to say right off that brand Y absolutely wants to be a part of the solution, because you know what they did when I kind of, during these conversations, brand Y came to me and said, you know what, you're absolutely right, and we don't want to make bad records, and the fact is that we don't talk to the customers, so we want to know, okay, can I send you records? I said, yeah, you can send me records, but look, I'm going to tell people the truth. I mean, you know, what do you want me to do? No problem. So what it is that he did, check this. Great respect for the way he did it. And we're going to do it. We're going to do a live review right here. What it is that he did is, you know what I'm going to do, buddy? I'm going to just grab records off the shelf, stuff that we recently did, and we're going to send it to you. Leave it shrink wrapped so that you can go in right away. See what you think. All right. So these are the 4 records that were sent. This gorgeous Tom Waits. Yeah, one of you is going to win. All these records that we're seeing over here, one of you is going to get all of them, okay? Who would like to help me do a review of these records? Not the music, the product. This Tom Waits. I don't remember who this is, but it's a good record. It's a double record. Lonnie Holly, Myth. Jaguar. Very, very good. Snail Mail. I'm new to it. Really like it, but Snail Mail. And this gentleman, Alex Cameron. You will be getting all 4 of these records if I choose you to help me do a review. What I'll do is I'll do my review right here, okay? And we'll go over the 10-point, my 10-point method. Okay. Point number 2. Point number 1. Let's go with the nickel test. This same person who heads brand Y talked about the nickel test. What it is that he was saying is, you know, when records are no good, we just scrap them. And what we do is, for me, if I can see that a nickel could fit where the record is warping, I consider that to be unacceptable. Okay. Is it enough? That can be debated. But I thought it was interesting to the point where I use it as my comment. I would probably make it a dime test or a pence test. But nickel test, it doesn't matter. All this is to say that now we can say, if you can slide something under it, that's when you know that there's a problem. So if we go with that, okay, and we review these records, I reviewed all of them, so I don't need to pull them out, but they all passed the nickel test. Every one of them passed the nickel test. So from that end, I can say these guys did their job right. Cool. Step 1, right? Okay, so step 2. Once you take the record out, just feeling the record matters. Because again, I know I sound like a broken record. Haha. We're selling an experience. The physical part of that experience, the sensual part of that experience counts. So handling a record feels a certain way. I can tell right away if a record's been made right properly. Just, I touch the edges. Okay? And the really good records, the edges are all flat. The ones that are done badly, you know it. You really want to go a little bit closer. You know what you do? I know this because I wash all my records, so I wind up always drying them with a microfiber cloth. Usually when you put your records through the wash and all this, you have to kind of wipe off the excess water off the edges with a microfiber cloth. If a microfiber cloth is getting caught to the edges, you know, it's a standard. Some are worse than others. Some are good. Some are excellent. This one's not bad. I've gone through I've gone through all 4 of them. It's not bad. It's not perfect, but it's not bad. Acceptable. So, product-wise, doing pretty good right now. What else do I look at? Center holes, tracking issues. That's an important one. If a record's not perfectly centered, the arm's kind of going to do this a little bit. It's just going to move a little, and that's not good for your tone arm. That's going to give you tracking issues. Besides coming out and you hear it, it's not good for the mechanics of the tone arm. So that, if you have any of those off-center holes, that's got to be an immediate no. That's a scrap. None of these 4 suffered from that problem. All 4 of them were fine. We got that. Okay. So now, number 5. Oh, we're on number 4? Number 4, okay. Dinged corners. Now, it should be said that I use the dinged corners test only when they're records that I bought, okay? Because I received these records as promo, I don't expect the record company to send me pristine copies with perfect jackets. I know that there's records that get damaged, and I think that the good records belong to the people who pay money for them and buy them. The damaged records are for review. So I absolutely don't ever take it, I never hold it against them if I get a record that's got a dinged corner. I fully expect it, as a matter of fact. Okay. But are there dinged corners? I mean, there's dinged corners over here, but to me, that's not a fail in this particular case. However, if you try to sell these records, 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 of them, all 4 of them have dinged corners. So that would not work. Okay. So we move on. Spine splits. Now, use your eyes. Three out of the 4 records have spine splits. I wanted to keep one of them in the plastic to show you that the record had a spine split even before I removed the shrink wrap. So the spine splits were there before they were even wrapped. See this? 3 out of 4 is a 75% fail rate. Absolutely unacceptable. It's torn. It's torn. You don't put that in a customer's hand. I'm not saying I'm right. What I'm saying is that that's my standard. You can disagree if you wish. More on packaging. The shrink wrap. Is the shrink wrap too tight? You don't really see it over here, but this one is wrapped really tightly. Okay, now what happens when it comes to warping? Okay, you see how the jacket just stays open by itself? The reason the jacket stays open by itself is because when I slid open the shrink wrap, it was tight, so it kind of just brings it together. Sometimes it's so tight that you can actually see the jacket kind of like warping within the shrink wrap. You're damaging your own record. You're damaging your own record. I don't understand. Makes no sense. What it is that I've seen when it comes to shrink wrap is I've seen looser shrink wrap, like, you know, the bag type shrink wraps where you just tear off the edge and then you can use it as a bag. I find that very convenient. And I've also seen shrink wrap that has tiny little perforated holes in them. Okay, so it creates a little bit of stretching and it makes it so that you're not, you know, the record doesn't get all compacted. Now, what happens to shrink wrap when it's hot? You know those warped records we were talking about? What happens to that shrink wrap? Package gets tighter, right? So you're shooting yourself in the foot over here. That, I mean, it's something that I see so regularly, and it's still something that makes no sense to me because it's probably the easiest solve in the world, but it happens. Okay, we look at the record. Surface noise becomes the obvious one. Is there any surface noise? When it is that I talk about surface noise, I look at it in 2 different ways, okay? The first way is the obvious, which is to say that there's an obvious defect. So what I mean by that is pops, clicks, scratches. Now, I've listened to enough new records to know that a lot of records are charged, okay? So you gotta kind of like make sure that you remove the charge from the record. Usually if you give them a wash and you use the anti-static brushes, it helps, you know? But you gotta give them a chance to dry. there's a whole process I go through. So I make sure that I go through that process. I know the difference between a static pop and a pop that's a defect in the vinyl. If there's defects in the vinyl, you can hear them. That's the first thing, when you hear pops, clicks, that kind of thing, okay? Number two is when it's not what's on top. It's not the music on the top. It's the record itself that makes noise, okay? So you know when it is that you get those records and you hear it like at the beginning of the song, and you hear it in between songs, and you hear it during the run out, okay? That's basically what it's telling you, is that that wax that it's pressed on is noisy to begin with. The material is already, you know, I would say subpar, okay? Now, there's a lot of recycling that happens, and I completely understand that. And it should be said that there are different standards when it comes to different music. Okay, so for example, I mean, if I'm not going to get all that picky when it comes to my metal records or my punk records or my hardcore records and all the rest of this, because they're loud. So I don't mind a little bit of in the middle. I don't care. I don't care. Okay. If I'm buying a classical record, or if I'm buying a record with a lot of soft passages, and I'm buying jazz, especially, don't fuck with my jazz. That same vinyl that I would accept for the punk record and the metal record, I would absolutely, absolutely not accept for a jazz record. And in this case in point, I think about those Blue Note 75th anniversary reissues. You know, maybe if it's on a regular turntable, or I don't know, Crosley or whatever, but as soon as you start getting to the point where you have a decent turntable, you're going to start hearing the difference. And to me, that is just, I didn't listen to a record, you know, when there's a bass solo happening, or when there's a brush just brushing up against the snare, I want to be able to hear that. That's the dynamic I'm paying for. If it's pressed on shitty vinyl, it's not an acceptable record. Make a punk record with that vinyl. Okay, so that would be the other standard. Physical irregularities. I don't have any. The 4 records from Brand Y that I talked about had no physical irregularities at all. But when I talk about physical irregularities, is pretty simple. Surface scratches. The big one that I always look for is dimples. Okay, so you'll see in records kind of like these little dimples, like literally the surface of the record has defects on it. It happens a lot, man. That's a no-go immediately. No-go. No point at even reviewing the record at that point, because it's a non-starter. But I see it regularly. Okay. There were none on these here. Sound dynamics, audio quality. Again, that really all depends on what I'm buying. Okay. The good thing about those Blue Note 75 records is that they're affordable. And that matters. Okay, so those affordable records for somebody that has, you know, just a regular old system, or, you know, lives in an apartment or whatever, that's cool. I get that. You know, I do understand the market for that. However, you know, for the higher up stuff, or for the stuff that's made of better quality, I expect it. I don't expect the vinyl. I expect the vinyl to be completely silent. That is not always the case. Okay. Finally, what it is that I look at is the overall package, which is to say liner notes, packaging, the jacket, and my entire experience with that record as I'm spinning. That's important. And that's where I start getting more into the qualitative thing of, hey, did I actually enjoy myself? At the end of this whole thing, while I did all the, you know, while I did the nickel test, check the edges, all the rest, at the end, the important thing is when I sit down with a drink and I listen to it and I drop the needle. What kind of experience did I have? Did I enjoy sitting with this record, reading my liner notes? That's probably the most important thing. But those are the 10 standards that I use when I look at a record. Am I saying that that's the way everyone should do it? No. I'm saying that's the way I do it. So, in other words, if we had to look at these 4 records, let's give this guy a grade, okay? The nickel test passes. The edges are a little rough. There's no extra flashes, you know, when there's the extra pieces of vinyl hanging around. None of that. So that passes as well. The center hole is perfect. There's no tracking issues. Boom, he passes there. These are all the big ones, right? Spine splits. Big ol' fail. You saw him. There you go. The spine splits is a fail. Dinged corners. my opinion on these particular records don't matter because I didn't buy them. But if you had to buy them, dig corners are unacceptable. Shrink wrap too tight. Usually you can see that leads to warping. Surface noise, surface scratches, dimples, physical irregularities, sound dynamics. You can hear a good record, and when it's pressed properly and mastered properly, believe me, you hear it. Proper mastering, right away your stereo wakes up. Is it mastered for vinyl? That makes a difference. Okay. If you're getting a record that wasn't mastered from vinyl for vinyl versus a record that's mastered from vinyl, you're not buying the same thing. You're not. A Toyota Prius is not like a Lexus. It's not. All right. Why don't we use those same standards and see what happens with company number 3. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put company number 3, one of my sponsors, under the gun. And let's see what happens. These are records that I received yesterday. Okay, so no favoritism. I'm showing you exactly what I have. And what I'll do is I'll give you also the response to this. See this Queen Latifah? Those 10 points? It passes on all of them. Every one of them. The liner notes are amazing. The record sounds fantastic. It sounds like it did when I pulled it out of the boombox. Everything's perfect about the record. Juju's, same deal. I will get to a problem. But we'll see what happened and what solution there was. Art Ensemble of Chicago, printed by Org at Palace. Fantastic. Perfect. Now we get to the problem. One thing that Vinyl Me Please does is they do a lot of those limited edition records that they don't press themselves, but they kind of like just get a certain run of records from a label, for example. What happens there is, I've noticed when it comes to the records that they press themselves, the quality is outstanding. Okay, and they have a very good kind of return system, and they take the whole thing seriously. They're good with their customer service, but every once in a while that falls through their hands, and I would think that probably the most difficult place for that to happen is just stuff in their regular store and the special edition stuff that they didn't really make themselves, that they just put a number on, and that comes to Thou. Okay, I received one of these, and you know, I tell them because I think it's my responsibility to tell them, you know, look, there's something wrong with the record. So there was a problem with the record, and it was warped, and I mean, I took a video and sent it. It's like, hey, you know, I thought at least you should know. Now, again, I received this stuff as promo, so I don't expect another copy back. I'm good. But it's very telling. The response I get is, oh, we got to replace that. We'll get you another one immediately. I never even asked. You know why? Because Vinyl Me Please does something. What they do is they factor returns in, and they know that they're going to get a certain amount back, and there's no problem. You know why? Because they focus on the customer experience. So what happened is they sent me another one back, which arrived yesterday. Now, Hessler, you don't know it, but that one's defective and warped as well, in pretty much the same way. So I think there are 250 of these. No, 500 of these or 750 of these, but you know, 2 out of 500. I'm 0 for 2. Again, what do we do about that? Complaining isn't what this is about. It's a question of how do we find a solution? How is it that I got 2 records and both of them suffer from exactly the same issue? And they were delivered by different delivery trucks on different days. It's not my imagination. Finally, the perfect vinyl experience. This happened just today. Prince. Piano and a microphone. I got both the single version and the book version with the CD and just the deluxe thing. When I received these records, I swear I'm not making this up, but the thought that went through my head is, fuck. If I'm going to do something and be honest and fully divulge what's coming out, I did receive these records before Showtime, so I gotta talk about them. Warner sent me these. Fuck, I hope they're gonna be okay. I really hope they're gonna be okay. I didn't know. It's because I don't have faith. But, you know, can I tell you about these Prince records? I would like to say that these records, both of them, are pristine. Pristine. The vinyl is clean. All around, you know how it is that I said that brand Y had just a couple of bumps, but still acceptable? This is perfect. Smooth like you wouldn't believe. Flat as a pancake. Gorgeous liner notes. Everything is perfect. Now, this doesn't surprise me either. You know why? Because I would think that there's an extra level of quality control there. These were put out by the Prince estate. Prince was meticulous at everything. I'm pretty sure that you can't release these records unless everything is absolutely perfect. And you know what? 0 for 2 on the thou. The Prince, 2 for 2. Full score on both of them. How is it that it's an 0 for 2 on one and a 2 for 2 on another? How is it that 3 out of the 4 boxes have issues? Am I trying to point fingers? I'm not trying to point fingers. What it is that I'm trying to do is I'm trying to shed a light on the experience that I had over the last 3 days with the hope that we have a conversation about it. Okay? Let's do something. The customer deserves it. Yes, Al Lerer, you want to get the Prince. Actually, I guess I'll tell you the vinyl experience when it comes to that. I was devastated when he died because I just... Too young. You know, none of us expected it. But you know what happened? As I'm opening the book here, I guess I'll show you the inside of the book and stuff. Honestly, it's gorgeous. Just, I mean, look at this, right? And the liner notes are just brilliant. But what they do is they have recollections of people who worked with Prince at the time as it was being put together. And there's this... but this was the part that got me, okay? There's this booklet here, okay? With a bunch of notes and anecdotes and so forth. What was happening as I was listening to this, it's not like I did it on purpose, but that's what it is that I mean by vinyl experience. I just was kind of... I guess I'll bring this up. I was sitting back and doing this, right? And flipping and reading the notes as I'm hearing Prince do his thing on a piano and a microphone. And it was clear. I mean, it's funny because these are supposed to be not good demos, but they sound fantastic. And I'm now convinced, I didn't see the piano and a microphone tour. I'm now convinced that Prince can do no wrong in anything. It's amazing. But the feeling that I got as I was flipping through that is, he's here in the room playing for me. It felt there was a presence. It felt like the music was immediate. And it felt like I was reading a newspaper as I was doing that, sitting in a comfortable chair. And I think that's exactly what Prince would have wanted. And I'm pretty sure that when the Prince family estate put this entire thing out, that was the idea. All this is to say that that perfect vinyl experience is absolutely attainable. I think that if all of us work together to make that happen, we'll get there. And I really do believe it's going to happen too. But yeah. Can I make a suggestion for making vinyl number 3? And I'll close here. Besides absolutely doing what Billy suggested, I mean, it's a no-brainer. The logistics companies belong at the next making vinyl, but I said this the first time around when they were planning number 2, but I'm saying it again, and now I'm making it pretty much, I guess, as clear as possible. One of the things that happened when I was telling Brian my experience with this was, well, you know, we're still learning. He absolutely accepted that. You see, what it is that I like about the making vinyl is that they're always looking to kind of just create something that wasn't there before. It's only the second one, so we learned something in the first one. We learned something in the second one. So there's always this wish to do a little bit better. The third one, I said it for the second one, and now I really mean it. I think that it's important to open this up to people who buy records. It's not just B2B, okay? B2B doesn't exist without B2C. Business to client. Client, client, client. Maybe they might not be interested in the PVC that's used in the machines and all the rest of this, but they're interested in how the records are made and why they sound like they want, and I think that we should give them a forum, okay? I'm not sure how much work needs to be done for that because, I mean, I didn't get a forum, and I paid to go there. But I think that's an important voice. To me, that's a non-negotiable. You know what? I know that I'd be able to head a panel like that. I'm not saying, or somebody like me. Maybe you want somebody who doesn't quite say what he means and mean what he says. You want somebody who, you know, pussyfoots a little bit more. That's possible too, but all this is I'm saying that if you find the right person and you invite some people in on one of those conferences, I'm pretty sure that it'll do a very, very, very big thing for creating goodwill and for helping to educate the public on what really goes into a record. And if anything, if I take my experience of going to Stoughton and bringing some vinyl junkies to the Stoughton plant and having them take the tour of just exactly what it takes to make a really good album jacket, every one of them, to the last person, said, I have such a great appreciation for this, for my records now. I didn't know that all of that went in. Wow, they really care. They felt more attached. I'm thinking that if we're going to get the same type of reaction, and that goodwill counts for something. Guys, I'm tired of talking, man. Was I fair? You decide. I don't know who's watching. I haven't had a chance. I don't know how many people are watching, but you know, consider this a survey. Consider this a test sample. Consider these comments. Read them. Take them seriously. These are not people that are being paid to comment. These are people that are commenting for themselves. Right? So let's make sure that we don't forget why we're doing this, man. We're in service of art. We want the best. And if this is really a craft, the carburetor person has to work with the brakes person, has to work with the car dealership, and so on and so forth. We got to work in concert, because a car is not just a collection of parts. And if you're selling a car properly, you're not selling a car, you're selling an experience. That's the luxury brand, right? Records are a luxury experience. Records are a qualitative experience. Let's never forget that. All right, folks. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm going to get off and talk to you, man. I'm going to play some records, and if you guys want to talk, I'm there. Thanks, folks. See you Sunday, all right? Sunday, we nerd out on music. I talk about nothing but music. None of this tomfoolery.